This is big news. The Commission for MMA is going to be changing the scoring somewhat, not entirely. They're making it a lot more clear for the judges so they don't mess up when they're scoring fights, which is actually very funny that they have to do that, but the sport absolutely needs it. I mean, these guys have no idea on what they're doing when they're watching these fights, and it seems that the Commission believes it's somewhat on their part of not making it easier to read for the judges, I guess. So they're going to try to eliminate some of the ambiguity of it, which I always said was one of the worst things about the scoring, how arbitrary is, but there's no way to eliminate arbitrary scoring in general, right? Because you have 3 people scoring the fight, they all have their own perspective of the fight, and there's no way to eliminate all ambiguity, but they're trying to do their best so that the scoring is a lot easier for these judges. Now, these changes are not official yet. They're going to be voted on in August, and then sometime after, they'll make the changes official. So we might not see the changes of the scoring until the end of the year. So here's some of the changes. They're going to be adding the word damage to the scoring, which damage was always a part of it. That was always the impact part of scoring that affects both striking and grappling. But they only had the word damage one time in their scoring criteria. Now they're going to be adding it a lot more, so it's a lot clearer for the judges to understand on what impact actually was. And this is how it's defined. Quote, legal fighting techniques, the results of which lessen an opponent's capacity and or their will to compete. This includes knockdowns, forcing the opponent to the canvas as a result of legal detrimental strikes, heavy and or concussive legal strikes to vital targets, legal strikes that force the opponent to retreat or readjust, or default to defense exclusively, striking and or grappling that lead to visual injury, swelling, hematomas, lacerations, or bruising. I think they should put etc. there, because the way they're writing it is just including those 4. I mean, I don't know what else there could possibly be, but just in case, you know, the sport of MMA is crazy. There could be some kind of technicality that wasn't written in the visual injury part of the scoring here. Grappling or submission attempts that hyperextend joints or cause rotational damage, chokes that cause visible distress. Interesting. So this is the definition of damage. I think this is a lot easier to read than the last one. They're giving more like sub-criteria on what damage is, and by making it more specific, they are trying to reduce the ambiguity of damage. So now the judges know exactly on what they're looking for when it comes to damage, and that's the most important criteria of the scoring, and it should be. So it continues, damage is the most highly valued component in judging a round because it is not an action, but rather a direct result of effective fighting. Damage is a measure of effect on the opponent, the results of which lessen an opponent's capacity and or will to compete, and has immediate or cumulative impact towards ending the match, with priority given to immediate damage over cumulative damage within a round. So this is very similar to what was written before, but it's including the word damage. And just like before, immediate impact or immediate damage is going to trump over cumulative damage. I'm glad they're keeping that in there, but I wish the cumulative damage part was more specific on when could that trump immediate damage. Let's say another fighter gets knocked down or they're like concussed from the strikes and stuff, but one guy lands like 30 significant strikes, the other guy lands like 10, and those 10 are slightly heavier shots. Which one wins the round then? You know, that's why I wish cumulative damage just by itself was more defined, so it leaves less ambiguity on that part, but this is better. This is definitely better. So as you can see, they're substituting the word impact for damage. Next is dominance. This is interesting. They're defining what dominance is. I'm guessing this is leading it to like 10-8 rounds and 10-7 rounds. Dominance is defined as supremacy of positioning, action, and or volume by one fighter over another for a sustained period of time. It reflects an imposition or mastery of fighting skills and effectiveness of one fighter over another, leading to successful tactics and or strategic advantages intended to result in damage. Interesting. This includes forcing the opponent to continually defend with no counters or reaction taken even when openings present themselves. So that means right there, they could be blocking punches, but they're not countering. That is going to be looked at as dominance for the aggressive fighter. Interesting. It continues, staking a dominant grappling position and continuously forcing the opponent to defend potentially fight-ending submissions or attacks. Note that merely holding dominant positions shall not be considered demonstrating dominance in a round. I am so glad they defined that right there. Holding an opponent on the ground is not dominant. It is now finally defined that way. So now judges cannot be doing that anymore. If one fighter is holding the other guy on the ground, he's not landing strikes, he's not going for submissions, that cannot be looked at as dominant when they score these fights. That is one of the biggest things they define right there. Maintaining an overwhelming offensive pace with any combination of legal techniques that continuously forces the losing fighter to consistently be in the defensive or reactive mode. So this is very similar to the first definition. It's pretty much the defensive fighter is losing the fight if they're not throwing anything back. So the scoring now is really favoring aggressive fighters. Then it defines duration. Interesting. Defined as a measure of time or percentage of the rounds spent by one fighter successfully imposing effective technique, thereby establishing dominance and or administrating damage. Okay, so it's just defining when they use the word duration during the damage and dominance segments. Interesting. Okay, so they're really eliminating ambiguity in this. So now we know what damage, dominance, and duration actually mean in a fight, with no confusion at all, right? Then it defines successful striking and successful grappling. Judges shall evaluate the relative effectiveness of each fighter's mixed martial arts techniques, such as successful striking, defined as legal strikes that result in damage. Easy enough. Successful grappling, defined as the execution of grappling skills proven productive by the damage resulting from takedowns, reversal, submission attempts, and achieving advantageous positions. So when it says proven productive by the damage resulting from these techniques, then we have to go back to damage to see what that means for grappling. So when we go back to damage, striking and or grappling that lead to visual injury, grappling or submission attempts that hyperextend joints or cause rotational damage, chokes that cause visible distress. And I'm guessing ground and pound is also going to be a part of grappling, I would think. But it is somewhat confusing when it says reversals and achieving an advantageous position, because when do those ever cause damage? But I'm guessing it means like what kind of damage they establish from the reversals and from achieving advantageous positions, like let's say full mount, right? Just getting the full mount isn't enough. It's what you do in the position that's going to count. I think that's what that means. And it continues, the effectiveness of each fighter's successful striking and grappling, as defined above, shall be the determining factor in the scoring of the vast majority of rounds. However, if a judge absolutely cannot determine even a marginal advantage in either, they may proceed to the elements below to determine the winner of the round. So absolutely cannot determine even a marginal advantage in either successful striking or successful grappling. Then they go to aggressiveness. This means it has to be absolutely equal from their eyes. Same as before. Aggressiveness is defined as consistent offensive effort, and then fighting area control is defined as dictating the pace, place, and position that the bout is contested. Hold on now. Are these two scored at the same time? Because it doesn't say that aggressiveness is scored before fighting area control. The scoring criteria we have now says that. It says aggressiveness comes second, then fighting area control comes third, if aggressiveness is equal. Here it seems like those two are scored at the same time, if striking and grappling are equal. Note successful striking and successful grappling are equal, as both are measured as a result of effective fighting. And the numeral scoring system. The 10-point must system will be the standard system using for scoring a bout. Under the 10-point must scoring system, 10 points must be awarded to the winner of the round, and 9 points or less must be awarded to the loser, except for a rare even round which is scored 10-10. A round shall be scored 10-10 when both contestants have competed for whatever duration of time in the round and neither fighter has established an advantage. This score is generally reserved for use in partial rounds. Scoring completed rounds 10-10 is seen as a failure to adjudicate a score. Okay, 10-10s are never going to happen unless the round is partially scored. So I guess it's like with, that's like the Mansoor Abdul Malik fight where the third round is scored partially. Therefore, in a round like that, they could score a 10-10. But as it says here, if the round is completed, scoring it a 10-10 is a failure on the judges scoring the fight. Okay, so rounds that are draws are nearly impossible, just like it was before. I wish they actually changed that. There are some rounds that should be a draw. Then a round should be scored 10-9 when a contestant earns the round by offensive actions greater in degree and effectiveness than their opponent. In the rare circumstance when the judge is unable to discern an advantage, only then they can utilize an advantage in aggressiveness or fighting area control. Okay, just a standard 10-9. A round should be scored 10-8 when a contestant earns the round by offensive actions that may include dominance with duration, but that must include significant damage resulting from effort or attempts that by their implicit nature could finish the fight. That is different than the scoring criteria we have now. 10-8s are defined differently than that. So it says it has to include dominance with duration. Now they have to be dominant not just in moments, but for I guess most of the round. And it must include damage that could finish the fight. So they're making 10-8 rounds like as if the guy's getting slaughtered out there. It says cumulative damage can be a form of significant damage based upon the fighter losing energy, confidence, stamina, or spirit. Significant damage is enough by itself to award a 10-8. Okay, so just damage by itself doesn't need to have dominance or duration, but if they're scoring dominance or duration, they have to have both to be a 10-8. You can't just be dominant in certain moments and win a 10-8 round. You need duration with it. The fighter needs to be doing that for most of the round. Significant domination along with some damage and little to no offensive actions from the losing fighter may be enough to award a 10-8. Significant domination such as positional control with damage is not enough to award a 10-8. Okay, so that is different too. Wait, that is actually huge. Fighters can't just hold top control for most of the round and win a 10-8 off of that. They actually have to establish damage with their domination. And remember, domination, duration, and damage are all defined here. Those are three key points in scoring. They are nerfing wrestlers. You love to see it. No, I'm joking, but that's what they're doing. They're making it tougher for wrestlers to get 10-8s, to win rounds if there's damage in the round. Like, they can't just hold positions and be confident they're going to win off of that. But as we all know, like, some of these fight judges are going to be incompetent regardless of how much they change the scoring. And then finally, a 10-7 shall be scored when a contestant earns the round by overwhelming in both damage and domination throughout the duration of the round. So pretty much one of them are getting unalived out there. So to get a 10-7 round, they need to have damage, domination, and duration. And somehow the other guy survived. Whoever is getting a 10-7 round, it means the other guy is so incredibly tough, he somehow survived a life-altering beating. That's what that means. Wow, they're making it even more difficult to get 10-8 rounds and 10-7 rounds, when they should be doing the opposite. I think it should be easier to get those different scores. And no two rounds are the same, right? A lot of times there's like a Adesanya versus Romero round, and then the next one is like a casual one-sided round and still score 10-9. There's no way those are the same, but they are scored the same. I wish they can use 10-8s, 10-7s, even go to 10-6 if they have to. I mean, there's 10 points there. Why are they only using 4 of them? 10-9, 8, and 7. They also added the technical decision. Now, I don't remember if this is actually in the current scoring, but it says here, penalties assessed by the referee shall be deducted from the judges' scorecards. If the majority of rounds are completed, and the fight becomes a technical decision, incomplete rounds must be scored by the judges. If the referee penalizes either contestant, then the appropriate points shall be deducted from the judge's scorecard. There is no scoring by the judges for defense. Defense allows the fighter to continue in the fight. Only offensive actions are scored by the judges. As usual, I think defense is only scored like around the beginning of the Zuffa era, if I'm not wrong. And then they changed that very quickly. They've always had technical decisions, but I don't remember if it was ever defined. So it's at least good to know when they will actually use a technical decision. But these scoring changes are very interesting, and these judges are still going to mess up these fights, aren't they? Like, I get it, they're taking it upon themselves to change it so the people scoring the fights don't make the same mistakes that they have been for years, but I think it's also the incompetent people scoring the fights that's an issue too. You know, I think they should change some of them with people that actually know the sport, know about fighting, have trained before or something. These guys come from boxing and they just refuse to learn what the sport is. It's still crazy to think about that. Joe Rogan looked to his right. He saw one of the ladies scoring the fight, and she wasn't even watching the fight. Like, come on, man. This is these fighters' careers. This is their livelihood. They're providing for their families, and there's a lot of stakes in winning and losing because most fighters have a win bonus. Showing up is not enough. Like, they actually have to win. And a lot of times, it's by decision. So they need the best guys to score these fights, not just some washed up boxing judges transitioning them into MMA and they never learn the sport. And it's crazy enough, we know all the judges. We know all of them. There's like 7 of them. And I can't tell you a single one that's actually good. Like, who's the best MMA judge? Is it Junichino Kamijo? And the rest of them, it's like John Jones poked their eyes out. It's crazy. But very interesting changes on the scoring. Now, this is not official yet. They're going to be voting on it. But I have a feeling they're going to pass this because it all seems reasonable and they're not totally changing the scoring. A lot of it's just making it easier to read and easier to understand by eliminating ambiguity. So even though they're not official yet, I think this is going to pass and it's going to be part of MMA scoring.